Aloha, welcome to um, this intuitive update in Floral Sanctuary in July 6th, 2025. Thanks for being here. And if you weren't able to be here live, know that you're in my heart and I'm happy for you to get the recording. So, um, and just so you know, the essences that I've chosen for tonight, they're already being broadcast to us. I've already started that, and I'll go over them in a little bit. Um, but they're being encoded into the recording of this session as well. So you will receive them in the recording. Um, so intuitive update. I guess it was probably a week and a half or 2 weeks ago that I felt the impulse. My voice is a little bit raspy, you can tell, if you know me. Um, I felt a need to do an intuitive update. I usually do a, a yearly themes session at the beginning of the year, each year. But I didn't do that this year. Just the energy didn't really show up. There was a lot of change for me personally during that time. Um, but yeah, it just wasn't an ideal time to do it. But I made notes of things that came through because I always seek spirit um and ask for themes for the coming year. Um and it's interesting, I'll get into that in just a moment, like some of the things that came through, which we've seen play out already. But um I do want to talk about one theme that actually came up in 2020, like the beginning of 2020, end of 2019. The words I heard for that year were fear not. And of course, that was the year that the pandemic started. And there was a lot of investment in fear and having us locked in a place of fear. And so it was interesting to think back on that year and that theme, fear not, and really kind of catching myself and how much I got caught up in fear myself, and didn't really, I mean, in some ways, definitely listen to that invitation to fear not. Um, but also, got swept up. I think a lot of us got swept up in the fear. And so I heard those words again for this year, for 2025. This was back in, I don't know, December or January. Um, but it didn't feel as strong as the fear not that I felt in 2020. But there was definitely this awareness, okay, we're going to be tested around, are we going to be in fear or not this year? Um, and that's really one of the main things I want to speak, or I want to leave you with tonight, is this idea that we do have a choice around fear. We can choose to entertain it and make it bigger and see things that we're experiencing that are going on in the world. We can choose to look at them from a place of fear, or we can choose to look at them from a place of trust and that we don't fully understand everything and that life has an implicate order that maybe if we just simply trust and stay focused on what is most important to us in the moment, focus on what we desire to create in our individual lives, um, focus on love, focus on connection, focus on creativity, um, that, time can reveal whether it was really appropriate to be in fear or not. And I know that's not necessarily for some people who are, if you happen to be in a place where you're fearing a lot lately, I'm not discounting your experience at all. Um, I'm simply pointing to the fact that there is choice, and that if you can reframe your experience, if you can reframe how you're seeing life, then you can have access to maybe a little bit more creativity, a little bit more higher thought. One thing that you learn in working with the nervous system and sympathetic system versus parasympathetic and the frontal cortex of the brain, the neocortex, um, which is the more higher developed human aspect of the brain, we don't really have access to the prefrontal cortex if we are stuck in fear or fight flight. So when we don't have access to the prefrontal cortex, we really have very limited experience of choice and agency. Um, and so being grounded in reality and not what could be, what might happen, what the news is telling us is going to happen, what our Facebook and social media friends are yelling about is going to happen. You know, I mean, that can be entertaining, it can be interesting, it can be important to expose ourselves to and important to like shut off at times. But ultimately, is it serving my highest good to be listening to that? And am I able to filter out and still have access to choice, to agency, to be able to see a bigger picture? So that's something I want to leave you with. And I'm curious if you have any questions or comments, Bradford, I know you're here. Um, feel free to just jump in and share, but or ask. So the other thing I wrote here is birth. Um, and it's interesting. Hopefully, I don't get caught up in a long story here, but so back in 2000, no, back in 2001, that was when it happened, 2001, 9/11, 2001. When 9/11 happened, um, I obviously that was a traumatic experience, and we all probably remember where we were, what was going on for us, right? Um, when that happened, I asked Spirit, I went into meditation and I was like, what is going on here? What's happening? And you may have heard this from me in another talk that I've done, or discussion, but I just want to bring this in because it feels important to the time that we're in now. Um, and what I was shown the map of the United States, and in the land of the US was this woman, and she was pregnant, and she was actually in labor. She was trying to give birth, and it was like she was really struggling, and you know, the sweat was pouring, and just the laboring that she was going through to bring forth this new child. And that's what I was shown. I'm like, okay, there's something trying to be birthed in this nation, and I don't know fully what that means, but we're going through a labor right now. And I think we've been in a season of labor. And something I was shown earlier this year, like within the last few months, was that um, there has been a delivery, and it feels like twins. I don't know why twins. It's a boy and a girl. Obviously I'm speaking in metaphor. So um, take this with a grain of salt, or like put your imagination cap on, and um, but it's interesting. We just had our birthday in this country, and we're getting ready to celebrate, this long, like 250th anniversary of the founding of the U.S. Um, so birth is kind of a big thing right now, and it's been coming up in different ways, um, synchronistically and signs and stuff. Just this theme of birth, and what when I look at the destiny of this country, um, from an astrological perspective and just an intuitive perspective. Um, and maybe I will just share. um, the chart of the country real quick. Um, so in the middle here is the chart of the U.S. This is the USA Sibley chart, which is the most agreed upon birth chart for the nation among astrologers. I mean, there's definitely other ideas out there, but this is the one that's most used and most has been most researched, we could say. Um, and when I look at destiny in a person's chart, which we could say that the country is a collective, right? It's an entity. Um, I look at the nodes of the moon, which is these horseshoe shaped placements, right? So the south node of the moon in Aquarius is like kind of our past, like where we came from, and the North Node, Leo, is kind of what we're here to really achieve and do, like what we're here to integrate and make happen. Um, it's really like the soul or the evolutionary edge, we could say. Um, and so you've probably heard me talk about this idea of the battle of the ages and this movement that we've been in between moving from Pisces to Aquarius and this kind of tug of war that's been going on between these two archetypes. Um, which I feel like we're squarely in the age of Aquarius, but the age of Pisces is still holding on. It's interesting that our South Node is in Aquarius, which means speaks to me that we have our founding of our nation was very strongly Aquarian. And if you think about Aquarius, it's about individuality, which we were really the first government set up in the world that was really focused. The founding fathers were very focused on honoring individuality, honoring individual sovereignty away from the king, which would be more Leo energy. Um, or Jupiter, but I don't want to get too people too confused with these things. But um, so we kind of have in our bones, in our DNA as a country, this archetype of individuality that is so important. Um, and we could say that in a way, part of our destiny is to share um, that movement, that idea, that value of honoring the individual, that the individual is worthy of being made room for, celebrated, that the collective, the group does not need to overshadow the individual, that there has to be honor and checks and balances so that individual sovereignty, individual development can flourish and not be swallowed up and um, overtaken by the group think or what the group wants. This was very key aspects of the founding of this nation. We could also speak of the fact that there was trauma. Aquarius is connected to um, refugee escape, being the outsiders. A lot of people fled Europe to come to the U.S., to the United States, to find freedom, which is another word for Aquarius, key word. So all these ideas that are Aquarian are very strongly connected to the DNA of this nation. Um, and the shadow of Aquarius is also like this idea of kind of separation and trauma. Trauma is deeply connected to the archetype of Aquarius. And we can look that there's trauma in our history. There's lots of ways that has played out. But and also the second house aspect, which this piece of this little slice of the pie is the second house of the chart, which is very much about self-reliance and um, being able to make it on our own kind of thing, like, just which I think just kind of reinforces or highlights further that whole um, individuality or sovereignty piece. Because we were trying to escape, the crown, the British crown. That's a big part of it anyway. So when I look at the North Node, which is kind of like what's our evolutionary edge? What's our goal? What's our, where's our growth, right? Um, it's in the eighth house, which is the house of, we could say, intimacy or connection, like deep, deep connection with the other. Um, so this would be like sexual partners in an individual's chart, but in a nation's chart, this would be people that we are in relationship with on the world stage, right? So Leo being belonging, this idea of belonging, of connection, of mutual honor, respect, of and it's still, it's still connected to this whole, we could say, polarity of freedom, sovereignty, um, creativity. Like this is all Leo Aquarian energy. Um, which Pisces, Virgo is a very different animal, which is kind of what we're collectively trying to move out of, we could say. Not saying that those archetypes are going away. It's just that we're moving into more of a place of honoring individuality, honoring sovereignty, which is another good word for Leo, um, cooperation, um, mutual respect, and the like. Okay, so how does this translate to the bigger picture of the world and our relationship to it? Um, we could all, well, and before I go there, like the other thing that Leo is very much connected to is the inner child. So it's very much connected to playfulness and joy and the inner child. Leo rules children, actually. So I think for some time there has been talk about a new world order or a reset or um, these buzzwords that have been thrown out there. And um, I think, we are in the midst of a world order change, of a reset happening, but from what vantage point are we coming at it? From what angle are we coming at it? And I think there's been a lot of like desire from world leaders and past presidents to kind of impose an order on the world. Um, to force cooperation, to force um, everyone to be in the same predicament, in the same boat, more of a socialist, communist kind of leaning. And really, I see like our destiny as a nation is more toward a style of associating, like we have the 50 states that are associated. We're there's a bunch of sovereign states that are connected and we cooperate with each other. Um, and so this idea of the individuality of these different states is honored. Same thing with the country, with the world, and this idea of making sure that we're honored and that you're honored. And so in true eighth house fashion, we both can win. We don't have to sacrifice something for, we don't have to martyr ourselves for the sake of both of us winning. Um, and that whole idea of the martyr is more of a Pisces Virgo theme. Aquarius Leo is more about how can we all have success, really. Um, and so I think this whole birthing that is happening is really about the birthing of a new way of humans relating on bigger ways with themselves, but also on these global scales. And I guess I want to pause for a second and just make sure that I'm not like getting lost in the weeds and that you're understanding what I'm saying. So, do you mind just um, putting something in the chat or unmuting yourself and just let me know how you're doing?
Yeah, I'm really digging what you're saying. I'm following and it's making sense. I've also heard this way of seeing things that you've explained before, so it's not new to me,
Hmm.
but I do I'm understanding, and I love the way you use astrology as a tool for looking at the birth of and evolution of a nation. That's pretty
Mm,
cool.
yeah, thank you. Um, cool. Thanks for just that. It's good to just have a little bit of input and feedback. Feel free to jump in again if you want to, but yeah, so I feel this birthing is a birthing of not to be too grand, but the birthing of a new human, a more evolved human, humans that have who have their sovereignty intact and can flourish. They're not swallowed up in the collective karma or the collective miasma, we could say. So I feel like that's part of what this birthing is about. And there has been what, maybe you've been through a bit of awakening during this time since the pandemic. I think a lot of people have. I noticed that more and more people are aware of things that have been hidden, that have been kind of underneath the surface. They're becoming more aware of the ways that we have been controlled or manipulated. Um, wherever you are in that journey, kudos to you. It's not easy to really kind of have the awakening or realization of how much control we've been under and subterfuge and manipulation. I think uh, there was this CIA director back in the 60s or 60s, 70s, somewhere in there that said that, we'll know our job is done when the American people, everything that they believe is a lie. And I'm paraphrasing because I don't know the exact quote by heart, but um, you know, I th I think we're in a time now where that revelation, that revealing is happening on a mass level. The awakening to how much we have been lied to. And I think part of that, Trump being in the White House is an important piece of that, a big factor for that. Um, no matter how you look at him or see him or perceive him. Um, so this is the birthing that I feel like we're experiencing this kind of new human who is more liberated, Aquarius, more liberated to pursue the truth, to pursue what we individually want, what we collectively want, um, to have win-win kind of outcomes, um, to have success and flourishing. Leo is extravagant. Leo is the royal energy. It's um, and I feel like we do have the capacity and the destiny, the potential to have a golden age that Trump has talked about. Leo is gold. Leo is that whole archetype. Leo's connected, or gold is connected to royalty. And I do feel like that potential is very much possible. And one of the themes, I'll go back to my slides here. Um, one of the themes that and I don't know if I wrote it down actually, on this slide, this next slide. Um, one of the themes that I also heard among these, aside from these that are listed, was the trust fund, quote unquote trust fund, um, which you could look at that as an antidote to fear, is trust, and that there's in that theme or that idea of a trust fund, there is, for me, this kind of understanding or knowing that there's a lot to trust. There's a lot that we can trust in, that there's a supply, there's an account that we can pull from, that is trustable. So I'm using a lot of interesting language there, but hopefully you are following me. But that would be also Leo in a way, a Leo kind of energy, eighth house, too. So, excuse me. Back in December, I made a list of these words, and nuclear was one of them, explosive, both of those have kind of played out as definitely, being a part of this time, which as the year kind of moved on into the winter and early spring, I started feeling like June was going to be a big pivotal month this year. Um, and then it kind of I was shown that like this time between June and October, um, was going to be really the like a crossing over time. If we could say crossing over into something brand new. Um, Again, that whole birthing theme coming in. Um, I also heard forgiveness, like there would need to be forgiveness on, I think, large scale levels, but also individual levels. Grace, that we have a lot of grace that's with us this year, which goes back to that whole um, kind of invitation command almost to fear not. And then also rude awakening was, which I think is something that a theme that we've kind of seen continuingly, but it's going to accelerate, especially now that Uranus is going into Gemini tomorrow. It might actually, I haven't looked at the chart for right now, but it might actually already be in Gemini at this moment. Um, so Uranus will be in Gemini through November. It goes back into Taurus from November to April of next year, and then from April 26th of 2026 all the way up till May of 2033, Uranus will be in Gemini. Now, I think this is important for what we've been talking about because Gemini rules information. Gemini rules the media. Gemini rules reporting. Gemini rules perception and what we see, what we perceive, right? So, and so Uranus moving into this sign of communication, this sign that is connected to media, tells me that we are in for that whole theme of rude awakening being a big part of this time. Uranus is shocking, it's sudden, it's liberating, it's freeing. That's all. It's unique, it's different, it's things you didn't want to, it's like I said, shocking. Um, so I totally feel media, the whole media landscaping going through significant upheaval and change. Um, I can even imagine like um whole media networks collapsing. You know, I think by the time we hit in a few years, by the time Uranus is done with Gemini, I think the news that is available to watch will be completely look completely different than what it is now. Um, I don't think CNN will survive this transit, honestly. For some reason, that one is the big one that jumps into me for me. But Uranus, if we're talking about more differentiation, which is a Uranus theme, if we're talking about more individual sovereignty, individual expression, I think this whole idea of media being less and less centralized and more localized, um, I think we're just going to be getting news and media. I mean, this is already happening, but it's just going to accelerate. We're going to be getting news and media from people that others don't even know about, you know. Um, and they're going to be getting their news and media from people that we don't know about, It's just it's going to be very differentiated, I feel. And there'll be new personalities that will come on the scene. Um, but you know, one of the big ways that we have been controlled collectively has been through information and through what we've been told, what we've been allowed to know, to see. And so I see this transit being liberating to our perception of our ability to truly see, like, what are the facts? This is Gemini. What are the facts? You know, the opposite sign of Gemini is Sagittarius. Sagittarius is about ideology. It's about belief systems. It's about seeing the world through a particular filter and lens, and making sense of things from a bigger picture. And so Uranus and Gemini is kind of a liberating function from that archetype of Sagittarius in a way. It's a polarization against belief systems and dogma, which is all Sagittarian energy, and more connected to what are the facts, what is reality, what's the news and weather, and what's really real, And so I think we're going to be having some encounters with what's real that might be shocking for a lot of people. There might be some cognitive dissonance. There might be um, difficulty for people to really grasp things. Um, Again, some of this energy we've already been feeling and going through the last number of years have just highlighting the fact that this is actually accelerating. Um, and things are going to be picking up pace. We're moving from Uranus is moving from an earth sign, which is a slower energy, more plodding, into air. Air moves very quickly, right? Neptune moved into Aries from a water sign, so water to fire. Um, so there's a lot of fire and air elements in the current astrological weather, which to me speaks of things moving very quickly, you know, and this need to stay connected to our own heart and really stay in alignment with our own intuition, um, and flow, just flow with the wind, which brings me to this other archetype, this other theme that has popped in for current time for now, and that's the hummingbird, of hummingbird. Um, which just dropped in this week. If you think about the hummingbird is very focused on the now and finding nourishment for this moment and, constantly being in that place of being in the moment, in the now, focused on the sweetness of life, finding and also finding joy. One of the cards that I pulled, or one of the card decks I have is an animal deck, and one of the lines from that deck for that card, the card for hummingbird is what I wrote here underneath this picture, and it's always choose joy over fear. Um, so again, kind of connect to that theme of fear not. Um, so, the hummingbird can fly backwards, it can go up and down, and it's the most agile and adaptable flying um, being that we know of. And um, And then it goes on this long migratory journey, following the magnetic pull of the earth you know, I don't know the science of all that, but it's this deep trust that it just kind of flows with. And this little being, flies hundreds and thousands of miles for migration. It's just a fascinating animal. Um, so I think this whole theme of change and being agile, being adaptable, this is all important medicine for us at this time. Um, that we can either choose to get caught in the mind's fear and catastrophizing, or we can choose to say, okay, I'm gonna withhold judgment. I'm gonna withhold making a leap of um or a conclusion. I'm going to withhold that, and I'm going to just stay with this moment and just processing what's here and staying with what's real with me right now in my own, intimate life process, with my intimate relationships, with my community, with my home, with my animals, with my loved ones. I think this is the invitation, it's to focus on what do we want to create? How can we find joy? Where can we find the beauty? It's always looking for that nectar. Um, so this is the hummingbird medicine that I want to invite us all to experience. So now we're going to move into the flower portion. Any, and I just want to pause. Are there any questions or thoughts, comments about that, the the part we just went over?
No, thank you. I don't have anything. I don't have any questions or anything to
Okay,
add to that. Thanks.
thanks, Bradford. All right, so why flowers then? Why do I choose to work with flowers? And this slide really covers it. It's, flowers are the highest expression of a plant, really, as far as the communication with the external world. Um, and each flower holds unique imprints, information that are really, as this third bullet point says, they're unique templates for human flowering. So um, it's really beautiful when you start learning flower essences and start working with them, just how lovely and amazing each flower is, how unique it is, and the unique themes and aspects that they work with us humans on. So they really are a beautiful tool, especially if we're working with the soul emotional level of our being. Um, Dr. Bach said that the action of these remedies is to raise our vibrations and open up our channels for the reception of our spiritual self, to flood our natures with the particular virtue we need, and wash out from us the fault that is causing harm. Um, you talked about they're a bridge, they're a bridge between the mind, which often can get sidetracked or get off track from the soul. And so the flower essences serve as a bridge or a link to, or a repair mechanism to connect the soul with the mind and the heart, um, and help us stay on track. Um, just a beautiful, beautiful man, Dr. Bach, or Batch. If you're from the UK, that's probably how you'd pronounce that. So we have four essences tonight. One of them is a combination essence, which I'll get to. This one is Indian pipe, sometimes known as ghost plant. Monotropa uniflora is the scientific name, and this is a very unique plant. Doesn't have any chlorophyll. It's some people confuse it with a mushroom or a fungus, but it is a plant, and it is a parasitic plant. But this one is really good for using when we're holding on to resentment, grudges, and bitterness. It helps us to encourage us to rise above warring, and into a higher state of consciousness so that we can access forgiveness, one of those themes for this year, um, and expands awareness of universal love. So, yeah, I mean, it makes sense why this one would come up. There's definitely been a lot of like polarity and resentment and hostility and energy like that flying around. I know I felt some of it. You probably have too. And this is really kind of a doorway to innocence. Like, can we find innocence again? Forgiveness? Can we find that love? Hardy fuchsia. This is also an essence from Tree Frog Farm. Um, and this one, kind of carrying on this theme around love and the heart. There's several of these essences tonight that are really about that. Um, So the hardy fuchsia is about when you energetically shut down your heart from fear of being hurt. You know, when we're in that place of polarity, we're not, you don't think the way that I think, you know, you're a threat because you think you believe differently, it's so there can be some walls that go up. There can be some shutting down, some hardening. Um, and this essence is kind of helping to address that. It's also for when our sexuality might be divorced from our loving heart, so there's more of it's just disconnected from our feeling nature, our soul nature, and it's more about just the act or gratification. Um, this also helps deepen our intuitive knowing from our heart, aligns us with the magnetic field of the heart. And I found this quote was interesting, especially considering the hummingbird popping in this week. You can know in the same way that a migrating hummingbird knows where to fly by following the electromagnetic currents of its migration route. So this was a little quote from the write-up on this flower essence on the Tree Frog Farm website. So um, really beautiful. And this is a heart, one of their heart essences that they have in their spiritual heart set.
It's beautiful.
It is. It's gorgeous. And I've also seen some images of where the purple part here is more open, and so it's like it's very lush looking, but it hangs down. It's like this turning of the heart toward this honoring of the heart, and um keeping the heart grounded, connected to the earth, connected to the body. It's an interesting signature. It is beautiful. And I know fuchsia in general as an essence, this is a specific expression of fuchsia from Tree Frog Farm. But fuchsia in general, this plant has a very strong connection to deeply hidden um, things where emotions that we have get somatized, where we instead of feeling something, we're creating a pathology. And so fuchsia can help to bring things up that we need to feel so that the pathology can transmute into knowing and awareness and consciousness. Mauve Melaleuca, this is an Australian essence from the Living Essences of Australia. Really intriguing flower. It looks otherworldly. Um, and this one is about really connecting to that deep inner well spring of love, that eternal, um, ever-giving spring of love that's inside of us. So for when we feel maybe unloved by others, we've given, we don't feel like we're getting back. We feel unloved, trying to get love from the external and not really realizing that that's our nature. That's who we are. That's what we're made of. That's the stuff that we're made of. It also is just helpful for deep hurt and sadness. So Mauve Melaleuca, beautiful essence. And then of course, to honor Uranus, this is one that jumped in. Um, from Desert Alchemy, they have a whole box set of essences that were created to call their plants and planets set. And there's a an essence combination for every one of the signs as well as the houses and the planets. And Uranus is all about change, revolution, rebellion, sudden insights, individuality, uniqueness, all things that we've talked about tonight. Um, and so this is just to honor that place that we're all really being called to develop more fully and step into more fully our uniqueness and our ego nature. Like, what are we here to really birth, create, make happen in the world? You know, what's the change that we're here to create? You know. So in this essence are 8 flowers, no, 6 flowers, five, five. Sorry, I can't count. Um, so we have lobelia here, or Indian tobacco. We have Queen of the Night cactus, which is a night blooming flower, striking, huge flower. We have saguaro cactus down here at the right corner, flower. We have echinacea or bright star, and then we have buckwheat, wild buckwheat up here. So these are our essences for tonight. Um, so
You
I'm not,
have some Indian tobacco to go with the Indian pipe
yeah,
from earlier. Am I remembering the first one correctly? Indian pipe?
Indian. Oh, right. What? Yeah, right here. Yeah,
Mhm.
that's true. Um, so I'm going to invite you to, you can turn off your camera if you like. I'm going to go ahead and turn mine off. And I'm going to invite you to simply relax, lay back. Ideally, you would be laying down in a bed or recliner or couch or wherever is comfortable for you. The idea being to allow yourself to be in a place of receiving. And we're going to just invite, open up to these essences and allow them to take us on a journey. Your journey is going to be your journey with them. You may have a visionary experience, more like a shamanic journey. Um, you may have memories or your feelings come up. You may have sensations. You may fall asleep. There's no right or wrong way to have your experience. It's yours. So I just encourage you to surrender and allow and be curious about what arises. Try not to judge what arises if you can. Just be like a child. And so we'll spend about 20 minutes just receiving, and then we'll come back and complete our journey. As we're coming to the end of the healing portion, I just invite you, if you're willing, to just entertain a question. Who or what am I being invited to forgive tonight at this time? And just see if there's someone or a group or in a situation that arises to your awareness. And then ask yourself, am I willing to forgive? There's no judgment. If there's no readiness, there's no right or wrong, but maybe just be curious, see what arises, and invite the flowers to support you in whatever you choose. I just want to honor that whole theme and movement of forgiveness. And maybe just allowing the love, the eternal love that's within us, always present, the stuff we're made of. Just imagine that love rippling out into your world, freely given, freely shared. No expectation, no strings attached, just love, free. Free for you, free for me, free for those that we disagree with. Doesn't mean, of course, that we don't have boundaries, but there can be love even if things have to be closed, right? Love can still be there. Love can still be expressed in a no. And just imagine that love rippling out into the world, into this country, your city. And I invite you just to hold that space of love and transmission of love for a few moments, and then we'll complete our healing circle. All right, I invite you to bring your awareness back to this present moment, fully refreshed, recharged, renewed, and relaxed. Maybe wiggle your toes, your fingers. Come back to a seated position or whatever position is comfortable for you. I'm going to turn my camera on. You're welcome to turn yours on as well. Um, and let's just do a quick check-in before we say goodnight. How was that for you?
Thank you, David. That was relaxing. I dozed off.
Good.
Um, it felt like a long time.
Mm,
Um, it started with some deep thunder from outside at the very beginning. That was interesting.
mm-hmm.
And just lots of moving energy and feeling my sounds and movement in my tummy and even moving down into my pelvis and my base, um, and just kind of relaxing.
Yeah,
Lots of yellow.
lots of yellow.
Uh-huh.
Cool. That solar plexus.
Uh-huh.
Hmm. Yeah, I had some things moving in my belly as well, and yeah, it felt like some forgiveness showed up, which was really sweet to have that jump in.
Mhm.
And yeah, it just feels. I feel lighter. I feel, more settled, more connected.
Uh-huh. Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Well,
Thanks for the question. The forgiveness, the invitation, just giving the invitation about, you know,
how was that
forgiveness.
for you?
Mm.
You don't have to go share any detail. Just
It was just noticing how I felt some resistance, but also some openness. Um, that's not something that I have actively been working with, forgiveness, but like I just noticed there's some things arose that feels like I'll be saving for later to kind of work with when I have this time and space. And so thanks. I guess I'm thanking you for the invitation
yeah,
to
you're
open.
welcome. And if in, as that re-arises in your awareness, um, I just want to plant a seed. You're welcome to come back to the recording of this event, which you'll get a link to. Um, and, fast forward to the healing portion and, maybe spend some more time with the energy of these flowers to support you in any shifts that you're wanting to make, any forgiveness that you're wanting to have. That's something that you can totally take advantage of. And they're eager to help us. So
Thank you.
yeah, you're welcome. Well, thank you for joining me tonight, and or whenever you're watching this. I appreciate you taking your time, your valuable time to just receive and be with the energies of these amazing remedies and allies. And I totally welcome your feedback. If you want to share, feel free to email me, davidchitar@yahoo.com. And if you'd like to work with me individually, go deeper, um, feel free to visit my website, evolutionarywaves.com. All right, good night.